Hello and welcome to the Diverse Bookshelf with me, Samia Aziz. On this show, I interview incredible authors doing a deep dive into important themes and issues while talking all things books. If you're looking for a book that's wholesome, hilarious, real, authentic, and based on finding love, this week's episode is definitely for you. On the show today, I'm joined by Tasneem Abdur-Rashid, author of the newly published 30 Before 30 list and her debut, Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine. Tasneem is dedicated to telling authentic stories of British Bengali Muslim characters as they navigate life and love, presenting the complexities, beauties, and challenges that life throws at 20-something-year-old women trying to build the life they want. I loved the 30 Before 30 list and I laughed my way through, finding such affinity with Maya and all the other characters. Tasneem Abdur-Rashid is a British Bengali writer born and raised in London. A mother of two, Tasneem has worked across media, PR and communications both in the UK and in the UAE. Tasneem's rom-com Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine was published in July 2022 and the 30 Before 30 list was released in July 2024. She co-hosts the award-winning podcast Not Another Mum Pod and is also a phenomenal cook. I'm so glad she's my guest today. Tasneem, assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Diverse Bookshelf podcast. It's so great to have you on the show again.
Walaikum salam, and thank you so much for having me again. You weren't put off the first time round, so that's always good to know.
Oh, no, not at all. I loved speaking to you last time. And actually, you were one of my very early guests. I think the third or fourth author that was on the show when I started, about 2 years ago now. And at that time, Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine had just come out. So it was really fun talking about that. And now you have a new novel out called The 30 Before 30 List, which I have absolutely loved. But tell me a little bit about what life has been like since Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine and now.
Okay, so I thought that once that book came out, I'll be like an overnight celebrity. I wasn't. So I'm still the same person, alhamdulillah. No, but it's been really good. The reception was great. It was really, really positive. And I think the best part of that book coming out was all the messages that I was getting from people from Muslim communities saying that they'd never felt so seen in a book before. And I think for most people, it was the first time they'd ever seen the Sylheti language in a book as well. So I think that was probably the most beautiful thing about the launch of Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine, just receiving those messages. So obviously I'm getting those again this time, but it's a lot of the readers are people who have already read Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine. So it's not as much of a novelty as it was the first time round, but they're still really appreciating the fact that, there are more and more books where they feel represented in. So I think that's probably been the best experience and the best part about writing both of these books.
Yeah, and definitely I completely echo those sentiments. I think the way that you focus on representation is just so authentic and so real and positive and wholesome, but at the same time you tackle really serious issues. You don't romanticize anything or skirt over issues. You still address some of the negative aspects in our societies and communities, which is really important as well, I think, to sort of have that on a page and to be able to talk about it in a way that doesn't feel damning or overly negative.
I'm so glad it comes across that way, because I was obviously, I think a lot of authors like myself who are writing about our cultures for the first time and haven't got much of a yardstick to compare against. I think that's something that I was quite worried about. Obviously I wanted to tackle those serious subjects as well as the romance and the fun, and I wanted to be as authentic as possible. But at the same time, I didn't want people to read my book and feel as if I hadn't written it for them. And I was writing it for a different gaze or for a different audience, and I wanted it to be authentic as well as sincere and not, like you said, not damning. So I'm so happy to hear that it's come across that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you are a romance author. Your books so far have been fundamentally romance stories. They're about love and marriage, but also different kinds of love, family love and friendship too. But I know that in the publishing industry more generally, there's a certain type of romance novel that tends to do really well. Stuff that's very like spicy, what maybe someone like you and I would consider a little bit maybe inappropriate or like uncomfortable. How do you navigate the expectations that are placed on you as a romance writer to write a certain kind of story?
I've actually been really lucky, alhamdulillah. Like, no one has pressured me to spice up my books at all. With the 30 before 30 list, there isn't even a kiss in it. Like, Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine had a kiss, and this one didn't. And I was worried a little bit. I thought maybe my publishers would push for it to be a bit more out there, and my agent, but no one did. No one actually told me to go and spice it up a little bit more. They loved the fact that it was wholesome, and they loved the fact that it was showing a different kind of romance. Like, the romance can be different things for different people, different communities. Everyone experiences romance in a different way. And I think they actually enjoyed and appreciated the fact that this was a Muslim romance. It was different from your typical, Colleen Hoover, or even forget Colleen Hoover, even like the more like tame ones like Sophie Kinsella and that kind of thing. It was even tamer than that, and they appreciated it. And they really let me be also as authentic as I needed to be. And yeah, I'm really, really grateful for that, because that's what felt right for this story. Like, the kiss in Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine felt right in that one, and here it didn't feel right to kind of shoehorn something in just for the sake of putting it in there. But then, having said that, one of my friends who read the book first before everybody else, because obviously I got the advanced copies and I'd given her one, she was like, "Where's the kiss? Like, I was waiting for that kiss and it never happened." And I was like, "Oh my God, man, not you. You're supposed to support me." She was like, "But I really wanted a kiss." So I don't know, how did you feel about not having a kiss?
I mean, it felt, as you said, like it felt completely natural in the story. I don't know where you could have put it in that would have been right. Because there was never really that moment in the particular story that you told.
Yeah.
But generally, like I was thinking that obviously this is something. I mean, not just like not necessarily a kiss per se, but physical contact in general is something that Muslim women that are courting have to kind of figure out where their line is. So what was your approach, and I guess like what were some of the things that you were thinking about when you're thinking about whether or not to include certain things?
I think with this one, because with Zara in Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine, she was a little bit more open to physical contact than Maya is here. And for Maya, this is the first time, she's ever been so-called like dating or courting before. She's never done anything like this before, so she didn't know where her line was. And I think I was figuring it out at the same time Maya was figuring it out, like as she was going through these different experiences and seeing what was happening. So, there's like Noah hugs her and she finds that really uncomfortable because it's the first time. But then because it's happened now, the next time she doesn't mind it as much. And I think they're the kind of things that Muslim women who are conscious of that go through as well. So I think I didn't plan it to happen like that. I know it sounds really like airy fairy and whatever, but honestly, like sometimes the stories and the characters, they kind of write themselves. They lead you into different directions. So I didn't go in there thinking, you know what, Maya's going to be like this and she's never going to kiss any of the guys that she's interested in and whatever. It didn't happen like that. It just felt natural. Everything that she did, it just happened completely naturally, and I kind of processed it as it was happening. So I didn't plan anything to be like that, and that's what just felt right for the character, because Maya's a little bit introverted, and it's the first time she's experiencing all these different things through the list. So I guess it just felt natural to have it like that.
Yeah, I mean, Maya definitely is a if we talk about Zara from Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine, she did come across slightly more like soft and gentle, maybe, but also, as you said, like more open, more adventurous. She really wanted this sort of whirlwind romance and experience to find the right person for her. But Maya has always been, from the beginning, very cautious, very suspicious, very sort of conscious about how or whether she's being judged. And that, I guess, like having those characteristics as a person would then determine how open you are to intimacy when you're, or just any kind of like physical contact when you're getting to know somebody who is a complete stranger. And so I think it absolutely was right, I think, to the story that you were telling. And it's as you said, like people do try and figure out exactly where their line is, like what they're comfortable with or what they're comfortable with at what point. And so, yeah, I think it was really great. So take a moment just to introduce 30 Before 30 list.
Okay, so this is a book about a girl called Maya. She's 27 years old. She's from North London, of course, because all my protagonists are from North London. But a little bit further north, 10 Park Lane, instead of Finsbury Park like last time. Anyway, so she's, like I said, she's a bit introverted. She has a routine. She's a paralegal. She's kind of been doing the same things, you know, every day, every weekend. She goes through the same like mundane routine. And then one day she gets on a train and she has this amazing like meet cute chance encounter with this guy on the train. They connect and they have this great conversation. But then he gets off the train before they have the chance to exchange numbers. And so she's absolutely gutted. Like, this was supposed to be her happily ever after. Like, nothing like that's ever happened to her before. And then he's gone. So she's left feeling really, really gutted. But then in his haste, he kind of drops a notebook, which she obviously picks up and thinks, should she look in it, should she not? And her friends encourage her to look in the notebook, you know, in case there are clues about him so she could find him again. And in the notebook, she finds a list of 30 things he wants to do before he turns 30. So she kind of starts, with the encouragement of her friends, she starts doing the stuff on the list, partly in the hopes that, you know, she runs into him somehow, but mostly because it's a way for her to experience things that she'd never kind of dream of doing before. So yeah, that's the premise.
Yeah, and it's so fun and interesting because we really sense it from the beginning that Maya, she seems like she's just stuck in a rut, and she's so eager for change in her life. And one of those things, obviously, like she wants to get married because that's what she wants to happen to her, but also she's very conscious that she's approaching 30, and as we know, like in the South Asian community, but maybe even more broadly, it feels like a big milestone for you not to be married at. And so there is a lot of pressure with that. And it's a really fun adventure, I guess, that she goes on when she does all these random things and she ends up meeting people in really unexpected circumstances. How did you sort of get to forming the character of Maya? Like, what elements, I guess, of her personality were you really interested in exploring, and where did it begin?
I think Maya is a little bit of a mix of a few different people in my life. So she's a little bit of a mix of one of my best friends, one of my cousins. So I kind of lifted parts of their lives and personalities and put her into Maya. And what I really wanted to do with Maya was explore someone who's different from my previous protagonist, who was Zara, because Zara was a lot more confident, a lot more sure of herself, and she was happy in her job and she wasn't stuck in a rut or any of those things. And Maya is. So I really wanted to kind of look into what it's like to be at that age where you've been kind of in a job for a few years and you don't really know where it's going. You're not really 100% happy where you are. You're not being valued properly where you are. You've obviously got that bit of family pressure, but this time I wanted a different kind of family dynamic. I wanted to explore a family who doesn't put such intense pressure on Maya to find someone. Yeah, they want her to find someone, but they're not going to do absolutely everything they can to like shove her into a relationship. They kind of want her to find someone herself as well. And Maya's 27, so she's still got a few years left. And I really wanted to explore through Maya also a brother-sister relationship, because in the previous book, Zara only had sisters, so their family dynamics and setup was different. It was a very matriarchal kind of family. But in this one, there's her brother, and I really, really wanted to kind of explore what it's like in South Asian and Bengali families when you have, the precious golden boy son, who and the daughters kind of always can never quite live up to her brother, and her brother kind of gets away with everything. So I've got 4 brothers. I've also got the 2 other sisters, so we're a huge family, but I've got 4 brothers. And to be honest, my mum does treat us differently, and even though we're the daughters and we're the ones who are always there and we're the ones doing everything, for our parents, and the boys are kind of flit in and out, you can really see the difference between the expectations a lot of like Bengali mothers have on their daughters compared to their sons. So that was one thing I really, really wanted to explore through Maya as well.
I thought the brother-sister relationship and just the exploration of having a son in a Bengali or South Asian family was so interesting. And at times, like it felt like a little bit difficult to read because it felt like it hit so close to home. I mean, I have a brother, and he's very different to Malik in the book, but there is definitely something about the inequality in a family where you have boys and girls, definitely. And especially I think when it came to Maya's brother's dating life.
Yeah.
Now, you made a very conscious decision for these are going to be slight spoilers, but I think it's okay. You made a very conscious decision for Maya's brother to be dating a white girl. Mm-hmm. What was that about?
I think it's just something I've seen happen so many times, and I've seen it play out in various people's lives so many times where, you know, you'll have this boy who'll go and he'll date and he'll have fun, not really thinking about the future because he's still young. He doesn't have to think about the future. He doesn't have that pressure. He doesn't have like eggs that are drying up. There's no ticking time bomb that's going to explode as soon as he turns 30, you know. So, you know, he's just having fun, dating, whatever, not really thinking about the consequences, not thinking about the impact it has on the other person, as well as everyone around him and himself, and just doing whatever he wants to do without, you know, the repercussions. And I think partly in Malik's case, it's partly because he's obviously the son, and also because he's not the eldest, he's the second child. He doesn't bear that, you know, the guilt and the responsibility that the firstborn often bears. So I think I've just seen it happen so many times, and I really wanted to explore that and show like how it affects the woman as well, the woman that he's dating, and the impact it has. But what I also wanted to do was, so I made the decision to have his girlfriend not want to pursue at the end. So she is the one who lets him go at the end. And I was very conscious about that because I feel as if that is something that needed to be explored as well. It's not a case of, you know, he gets to do whatever he wants and then he's, you know, I wanted her to have autonomy over her future and realise her own worth and realise that she deserved a lot more than this boy who didn't know what he wanted out of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I didn't want it to feel like a cliche either, because obviously you have that cliche white boy dating white girl and she's dying to marry him and then he rejects her in the end. I didn't want to have that either, because that's not what always happens. It's so nuanced, it's so complicated. There are so many different ways it can play out. Sometimes there is a great happily ever after, you see that, and sometimes it's like devastating and you see that too. So I guess I wanted to show like different elements of that.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, in some ways the fact that his girlfriend is white, I think, is important, and you were putting forward a certain story which plays out. But that also happens with young Asian men dating other Asian girls, but they're not committing. Yeah, and the issue isn't always and doesn't have to be really about race. The issue is that he didn't want to settle down, and he wasn't sure that this was the woman that he wanted to settle down with, and that he wasn't willing to do what he needed to do to take her to his family, for example. He wasn't willing to do that stuff. And that is more about his, I guess, lack of character or good practice to take that forward, rather than just the fact that she was white, which I also found really interesting, because even when Maya obviously is in the corner of the girl, and it doesn't even really come up. It doesn't seem to be a thing that it's because she's white. Maya is constantly telling her brother, you don't treat anyone like that. You don't lead on somebody like that. You don't make them feel like they're not good enough to meet your parents. If you are, on the other hand, going on holiday with them and giving them all the right signals and going shopping with them and stuff. And I think these are like really, I don't know, like universal values and somewhat universal experiences, which I found super interesting as well. But
what did you think of the brother? Did you like him or hate him?
I was very torn.
Yeah.
So I think he did, in terms of like trying to be there for Maya, I think he did step up somewhat. I think they were dealing with stuff just within the home. You know, he was feeling like there's a financial burden on him to do stuff, and they were just not talking about things. But he did seem to try and guide her when he felt like she was making the wrong decisions or like overlooking things or whatever. But I think that he was very immature and irresponsible and just
and entitled.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, like you don't treat anybody like that, regardless of whether they're a South Asian girl or a Muslim or whatever, right? Like that was awful. That was not a good thing to do. But like you said, I have seen it in so many different ways and in so many different settings. So I think, yeah, I'm a bit torn, but I think what we saw at the end was potential growth. But I don't know. We'd have to have another book in order to know what he really has learned from the situation.
And to be fair, he was also 25.
Yeah.
You know, so he wasn't. He was 25, and he did have a lot of like financial pressure on him for someone so young as well. But yeah, at the same time, he was super entitled and also a product of his own society and family and the way he was just revered, you know, within the home.
Yeah.
And it made him feel as if he could do whatever he wanted. He just didn't consider people's feelings at all.
Yeah.
But then I suppose that's why he had a sister, decent sister.
Yeah. Bring it back on the right track.
No, I've had enough of those conversations with my brothers, you know.
Good. That's so good. I really we do need it, unfortunately. But let's go back to talking about Maya, because she is the protagonist, but also just a really, really wonderful character. So Maya, as you said, she meets Noah on the train, and they have this like really, especially when she looks back at it, she realizes that it was actually this like really dreamy interaction. Like it is the thing that rom-coms are made of, right? And she becomes really interested in wanting to meet him. But sort of as time goes on, you know, she says that like, oh, he's fading from my memory, but she holds on to this hope that she will meet him and it will just be perfect. But at the same time, she meets somebody, or she's introduced to somebody in a more conventional manner through an arranged marriage setting type situation, who she already has a bad impression of because she met him somewhere else before. Interesting, because she didn't seem willing to give him a second chance, but she also, I guess, on some level had the situation with Noah going on at the back of her mind. So what were you really trying to explore with this idea of like how we can sometimes stand in our own way?
Yeah, I think, you know, when you meet somebody in an arranged marriage scenario, right, you've got kind of one chance to see whether or not you think they have enough potential for you to meet them and explore the option of marriage. But with Maya, that one chance is sabotaged because she's already met him before and she's got this bad impression of him. So then he's obviously got no shot when they meet through the family. So I think that's what I wanted to explore. I wanted to just explore how it's like, I don't know what word to use to describe it, but it's just the whole pressure of the arranged marriage scenario and having to make such a big decision based on such a small interaction, and how one little thing, one little word out of line, one little bad impression, anything, you know, a look, it could all just kind of, you know, throw it to the wayside, even if that person could be right for you. So I guess I wanted to explore how first impressions aren't everything. It's a bit of like a little bit of a Darcy situation. So, you know, you meet somebody and they can be a certain way, they can be a bit standoffish, they can be a bit, you know, bit tongue-in-cheek in the wrong way, they might have foot and mouth disease, whatever, they just come out with the wrong thing at the wrong time. But that's just because they're nervous. So it's really important to I think it's really important to just give people a chance and get to know people. But obviously with Maya, she was, like you said, she was in a situation where she was so engrossed in the list and Noah, and she had all this stuff going on, like she just didn't have the headspace to deal with Zachariah on top of all of that. But yeah, so I think in an arranged marriage situation, basically don't judge people on the first meeting. Yeah, that would be the bottom line.
Exactly, but that's so hard, right? Because she already, I guess, in that situation felt judged, and she'd had this like mishap in the kitchen where everything had fallen on the floor, and then there was this moment where that I really felt like my heart dropped to my stomach when her mum said, "Oh, you have to bring in the trays of food with your cousins," and I felt like, oh no, that doesn't feel like a good sign. And then so she's already feeling the pressure of that, but then because of this interaction that she'd had with him previously, where she felt massively judged, but she didn't even, it was such a bizarre situation, and like that was just so crazy that it felt like, you know, when you have like an entire like tie that unravels from like just one tiny bit of thread, like that's what that night felt like. It felt like a small, it was like a tiny little thing, and the whole thing, I remember the next thing she's planning on going to Jerusalem, like it was so bizarre. It was so bizarre. So
but it just shows how, you know, sometimes it's like you could just catastrophize the things in your head, you know, and it's like one little thing, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it just snowballs, and then you don't know how to come back, because at that moment when she meets him in her house, she's like, how can she give him another go? Even if she wanted to, she can't, after what happened last time and what she said to him and how she's behaved. And, you know, you just feel as if there's no going back. And I think that's what happens with her relationship with him. Because of that, everything that happened, she feels as if she can't go back. So even when she starts to like him, she feels like she can't like even tell him, because now why would he accept her? She's already rejected him, you know, twice. Yeah.
Oh. So one of the other things that you explore are friendships, and one of the main friendships is my, I was going to say Zara. One of the main friendships is Maya's best friend Dina, who is her like one of her really good friends. They've known each other for absolutely years. But Dina and Maya are at very different points in their life. So Dina is married and has a child, and now is pregnant with baby number 2, and she's sort of like nesting, and it's all like, you know, her life seems to be going in a certain direction, and Maya is just not at that. She's not at that same point in her life. And so what we see is this real struggle that Maya goes through in feeling slightly like Dina doesn't have time for her. Dina's forgetting their plans of going shopping, and she feels somewhat like she's being left behind. And I think that is such a common experience. I think so many
Definitely.
of us
I think
feel
everyone,
that.
we all do that. Yeah,
Exactly.
we all experience that.
Yeah, and I think at so many different points in your life, like if you're taking longer to graduate and all your friends have graduated, or if you've graduated and everyone's got a job and you don't have a job, or like if you get married and no one else is married, or other people are already married and they have kids and you don't have kids, like it's really, 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 really difficult. What sort of fed into that friendship, and what were you really interested in bringing out?
I think like you hit the nail on the head. Like it's something that you always everyone will experience it, because no two people grow in the same way, right? And no two paths travel at the same speed. So everybody goes through different things at different times, and I think it's something that recurs throughout a friendship, because like you said, you know, sometimes you'll graduate and you don't have a job and your best friend's got a job already, or they've gone on to study further and you haven't, and you're still stuck in the same place, or they've got married and you haven't, or you're both married but one has kids and one doesn't, and it's constantly like that. And it's like trying to bring that, remember why you guys are friends in the first place, and just keep that, the beauty of your friendship intact despite all the growth and the changes and the way your lives, and when your lives change, you change as a person as well. So sometimes you're not on the same wavelength as you used to be. You don't always have you can't always talk about the same things. You know, you'll see it when some friends might become pregnant and all they do is talk about their babies, and suddenly you're like, what the hell, I've got nothing to say to you anymore because that's all you talk about and I can't relate to it. Or if they get married and you know, we go through it constantly throughout our lives. And I think I really did want to touch upon the fact that even if you've got friends and you've been friends with them forever, there will come a point where one person's life is just moving at a different pace to the other, and that feeling of being left behind and that feeling of thinking that they don't need you anymore, it's a really hurtful feeling, and it's really difficult to navigate. And I think I did want to explore that through, but I also wanted to show how you can bring it back. Like, just obviously you need to talk things through and not let these differences become so big that they drive you apart. And I just wanted to kind of explore that, because Dina and Maya's relationship, I loved it. I loved their friendship and the fact that they have each other's backs, despite the fact that, you know, and also Maya gets to see when she spends a bit more time with her that it's not as rosy as she thinks. It doesn't come without struggle. You know, Dina's struggling too. She's struggling to be a mom and be a wife and do everything and work and all of that balancing act. She's struggling with that Maya hasn't seen. She's kind of romanticized the fact that she's married with a house and has a child. So I just wanted to kind of explore that growth and the pace and how things change because of that.
Yeah, because what I've, like, through my own life, like what I've come to realize, and maybe I still realize it, like a journey, is that often the grass always seems greener on the other side, but the reality is, like, you don't know somebody's struggle. And we see it in the book as well, like when Dina finds out that Maya has come up with this list, or is coming up with this list, or whatever it is, she is just she's so excited for her, and she tells her, like, you have the freedom to do anything, and you're just being really boring, basically. And what is the glimpse there, what we get a glimpse of there, is that Dina wishes, or Dina longs for, in some ways, the freedom to be able to do that kind of stuff, because she can't do it at the moment because she's pregnant and she's got a small child. And so really it works both ways, doesn't it? Like, you may think because of something that you so desperately want that the other person has it absolutely perfect, but you don't know what they think when they look at you and look at the blessings and I guess, like, some of the freedom or the more time or whatever it may be that you have, how they perceive that. And that's a really different dynamic. Do you have any advice for anyone listening who might be experiencing their friendships change in this way?
You know what? Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very old now, so I have a lot of wisdom. Past 40, so I feel as if, I'm at a stage where I can bestow pearls of wisdom to these little 23-year-olds. No, but honestly, I think if a friendship is worth saving, you can't let little things like that get in the way. So long as your friendship is solid, it's not toxic, you don't have somebody putting you down and making you feel bad about yourself and where you are in life. I think that's the difference. Dina doesn't do that to Maya. She doesn't make her feel like she has been left behind. She doesn't, gloat. She doesn't put her things, rub her Maya's face in her achievements and accomplishments and everything she's, done. I think that's really important, because you can get friendships that can be toxic. And if the person makes you feel that bad, then they're not worth it. You shouldn't be friends with them. That means you've outgrown that friendship and it's time to move on. And it's okay. Like, some friends are only there to travel with you on a certain part of your life. They're not there to be with you from the beginning to the end. And I think it's important to realize when it's time to let go. In this case, when you've got a beautiful friendship and you're supporting each other, and it's just that your pacing is a bit different and you're a little bit off the same, you're not on exactly the same wavelength, that's a different situation altogether. And I think it's really important not to compare yourself or to anybody else's growth, because we all are on different journeys, alhamdulillah, and there's so much beauty in what we're doing. And there's, like you said, the grass isn't always greener. Everyone struggles in different ways. So if a friendship is worth saving, then I would say you can't let little things like that get in the way. You need to talk to each other and make time for each other, and not make assumptions. Like, if somebody misses a day or misses your birthday or whatever, just don't make assumptions. Just talk to the person, talk to your best friend, be honest about how you feel, and then just work through it. Because obviously if it's worth saving, then real genuine friendships are really hard to come by. And when you've got that genuine friendship and you've got a person who has your back and wants the best for you and isn't jealous of you, that's a beautiful thing to save. And I think it's worth saving, because you need that in your life. You need that. There are certain parts that other people can't fulfill, like your husband can't fulfill every part of what you need. Your mom can't, your sister can't, your brother can't. You need a friend as well. You need somebody who has your back. So I would say, just don't let things grow, like nip it in the bud, talk about it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because I think so many times we tend to just, like, we don't talk about it. And what happens is we spiral, and we like, it festers and it grows. And what is like, what could be something very small, or like a small misunderstanding or whatever, then becomes so much bigger. And obviously, like, there's different scenarios and different situations. Like if somebody is doing it repeatedly for like 3 years or whatever, then, you know, it's probably a different situation. But I think, you know, I think that patience and that communication that you spoke of is super important. And Maya also is quite good friends with her work colleague Lucy. I mean, the friendship with Lucy is like a bit complicated because it gets very messy. But Lucy is obviously is white, and a few times Maya talks about the difficulty in not being able to fully talk to Lucy because she's worried that she's not going to understand like the cultural differences and all of that. Can you talk a little bit about that friendship? Because I found that very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the case with everyone, but when I was writing the book, I did talk about this with a few of my friends, and we spoke about how authentic can we be around people who are from a different race or a different religion. Can we be fully ourselves? And we, in the group that I spoke to, we all kind of were of the consensus that we felt as if we couldn't be 100% authentic and 100% ourselves, because we would always feel like we have to hide little parts of us that might be unpalatable to a different culture, who might not understand things, who might look at our ways as, you know, a bit primitive, a bit backwards, weird. So there were parts of us that we'd hide in certain spaces. We'd feel as if we were going to certain situations and be almost performing like a show horse, because we have to feel as if, as a Muslim, we have to constantly be putting this perception forward that we're so great and we're amazing and we're not terrorists and we're not evil and we're not backwards, we're really educated and we're smart and we're fun, and look, I'm different, I'm not like everyone else, I'm the different one. It is exhausting, and we just kind of felt as if it's absolutely exhausting. So yeah, I wanted to touch on the fact that with Maya and Lucy, you know, they've got this great friendship, but it only goes to a certain level because they don't get each other's context in the same way as somebody who is Muslim or Bengali or whatever would get you. They don't get each other in that same way. What do you think? Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. I don't think it's I think it's like a very complex and a nuanced, because I think you can be very good friends with a person of a different background, but I do agree that I think there are limits to that, because what I found is that in a friendship, what you don't want is, you don't want to have to continually explain yourself. You don't want to say, oh, this is what my family do, or this is what this means, or this is what. And obviously, like, it's okay to do that sometimes, but to be in a situation where you're having to do that a lot doesn't feel like empowering, and it doesn't feel particularly easy. And I think
it's exhausting, it's tiring.
Yeah, and I think that depends on also like how long you've known somebody, when you met them. Like if you've known somebody from childhood, for example, I think it's a very different situation, because they're likely to have known your family over a period of time. They're likely to have been to your house a lot. But when it is somebody later on in life, and you've had 30 odd years of longer, whatever it is, of being who you are, and then them come in, I think it becomes a little bit more difficult to get that same level of openness and comfort. And that doesn't mean that like you can't be good friends with somebody and you can't have a great friendship, course. But I think what you said in that, like, can you be 100% fully authentic yourself, I think it's really difficult. And I think that's where that, I guess, like, the tiers of your friendships come into, about whether or not you are fully seen. Because that's the thing, that like with your closest friends, sometimes, you know, they can just look at you and they know what you're thinking, or they know what kind of day you've had, or they can kind of just tell that, oh, what did your mum say now, or what did your brother do now? Like they just sort of know with your closest friends. And it's difficult, I think, especially if you've met them later on in life, to get that level of closeness to somebody that is from a completely different background. I mean, not that it's impossible, but I think it is very it's very complex.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it depends on when they come into your life. So with Maya and Lucy, it's very new. They're both, in their late 20s and they're colleagues. So they've come into each other's lives very, later on. But like you said, if it's your childhood friend who's been a part of your family for the last 20 years, it's a completely different thing. They know you, they know your parents, they know what you eat, they know everything. But when it's a new friendship, I would say it's very different.
Yeah.
And I think it's at that stage in your life anyway, it's hard enough to make friends, like really good, strong friendships anyway, even if they are the same religion and the same background as you. Even at that point in your life, it's difficult. So I think that when there's added layers of things that make you, different, I think it just makes it all the more harder.
Yeah. And I think as well in this, like in the world that we're living in right now, where Islamophobia is so rampant, it still amazes me the number of people that don't see it and don't get it and don't understand the everyday microaggressions that we have to deal with, and don't understand that such a thing as institutional racism exists. And I think even like within that context, that adds a layer of complexity and it just makes it a little bit more difficult to navigate. But I guess also like when...
And especially with politics and Gaza and everything as well, and that's another thing now, because now almost it's like, where do you stand? That's kind of, you've got to stand at a certain place to even get to the next stage in this friendship queue, And
also like having those conversations with people that are from such a different background to you is so difficult, because like we don't know how to have these conversations. Like, how do you start talking about political beliefs? Like, not even like about Palestine, for example. How do you call out white privilege? How do you call out the biasness of the media in such a clear way that to a friend especially is really, really complicated? I think it's been a lot of people, I think recently, myself included, have had some like really difficult conversations, and part of it is just that we don't even know how to talk about these things. Whereas like if you and I are having a conversation, I don't have to think twice what I'm going to say in front of you, right? Because I know that you get where I'm coming from and I get where you're coming from. But it's very different when you're talking to people that are from a completely different background. Yeah,
it is. And even if there's people who are supposedly allies, or you think they will understand, there will always be little bits that they don't. So like I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and they're very much pro-Palestine and all of that, but then they didn't get how the BBC is biased. They just take the BBC's word as gospel, and that was like a big red flag to me. And I was like, how can you not see this? But I didn't say it to them because I didn't want to, like, I just couldn't go there. Like, I just didn't have it in me. I didn't have the energy to go into that. And I think that's something I wanted to kind of explore a little bit. It wasn't the main focus of the story, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that there are different friendships. There's the friendships where the people get you completely, everything about you. And with Dina and Maya, obviously, it's also because they've been friends since childhood, not just because Dina's also Muslim. And with Lucy and Maya, it's a very new friendship, so they don't have that. But I wanted to explore the different tiers of friendship.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that it goes both ways too. Like sometimes,
both ways, of course.
Yeah, sometimes like when white friends talk about things that they're doing, or I don't know, like hen weekend shenanigans and things, I'm really lost sometimes because I don't get it, right? Like I just don't get it. And that's a very real reality as well. Like it definitely goes both ways.
Yeah. And it could be awkward for them too,
100%.
It could be awkward when, and then sometimes it's awkward as well. Like, sometimes when they're like trying so hard to find a restaurant that you'd be comfortable going to, and they just can't, they just want to go have a drink, man. And it's like, you're there ruining all their drink plans, because now can't go to the pub. Now they have to spend money on a meal. And now they're worried, can you even eat the food there? Or is it not halal? And all of that. And is the environment okay? And it's exhausting for them as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is really hard. A really good friend of mine, like she's one of my best friends, she's white, and it was her 30th birthday a couple of years ago, and she'd planned this birthday party where she'd like hired out a room. I think it was like above a pub or it was like connected to some alcohol facility, and it was just like she was going to get with her friends, and there was lots of drinks and dancing and stuff. And in the end, and basically I was like so anxious. I was like, I don't know if I can come. Like, I don't know if I'm just going to feel so uncomfortable. And in the end, I didn't go. I don't remember what happened. But in the end, I ended up not going. But I then went to see her like a couple of days afterwards. And she said initially, like, oh, I was so gutted that you couldn't come on the day. But then she said, but then I thought about it, and then I was like, oh, maybe it's better that you didn't come, because I would have just been worried about you, because I know that you would have felt so uncomfortable. So in that sense, like, it was good that I didn't go, because she could just have her fun birthday party. But it felt, I guess we both felt that.
And then she could be fully authentic.
Exactly. But we both felt that. But it was so... It felt odd that despite being such good friends, we couldn't share that momentous occasion together. And it's these kind of things, I think, that keep propping up in friendships in a whole variety of ways. But, it's lots of goodness in all kinds of friendship as well. What was your favourite part of writing the 30 before 30 list?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I think what I enjoy writing the most are the relationships between the different people. I loved writing the relationship between Maya and her mom, and how they have their little, in jokes and their little Bridgerton references. And obviously I'm a massive foodie, so I love writing lots of food in. And I loved writing the character of Maya's dad as well, because even though he's not a major character in the book, I just loved writing him, and how complex it is to be a first generation immigrant from Bangladesh, and the struggles that you go through, and the little things like not turning the heating on. And I just loved exploring all of those little things. I loved writing the grandma. I always loved a granny. I love having a nanny in a book, because my own nanny was so dear to me, and she was such a strong character, and I always have to write her in somehow. So I think so it's the different relationships. I think that's what I love most, is writing the different relationships. And then I love writing dialogue. I think they're my two favorite things to do, and then everything else is just filler. But it's all based around that.
So I absolutely love like all the female characters. I mean, I love all the characters you write, but I really, really love the female characters that you write, because they feel so well-rounded and so real and so authentic. And I can tell as a reader what you're really interested in getting us to think about, and the kind of stories that you want us to read, and just the kind of experiences that you're trying to bring to light. But when it comes to writing male characters, especially in this book, what were some of the things that you were really hoping to explore? I guess through maybe the character of Zachariah, and also like the dad that you said.
I think I wouldn't say that I had like certain things I wanted to explore through the male characters, but I would say that I wanted Zachariah and Noah to be different, but not like, so they are pretty different, but I didn't want either of them to have any major red flags. So I wanted them to have like, maybe little amber flags here and there. So things you're not sure about, things you need to think about. But I didn't want it to be so easy for Maya to kind of decide who she wanted to go with. I wanted to show that they were both, they both had their flaws, and they both had their qualities, and there were different things about them. Just as you do find in life with everybody, right? And I didn't want it to be like a really clear-cut, easy decision for who she should choose to go with at the end. And I think through the dad, I just wanted to have someone solid. I just wanted a solid dad. I didn't want to, like, he wasn't a main focus, but I wanted him to have a presence, have a little bit of a say here and there, but just to be like a bit clueless as well about the kind of things that's going on, and how he might be feeding into that. So I have the whole colorism thing in the book, and he's fed into that because he bought her Fair and Lovely from Bangladesh and gave it to her and thought it was completely fine to do that. And just like many men of his generation would think, that there's nothing wrong with that. So I wanted to explore like little bits, like little things. And obviously we've already touched on Malik and how, why he is the way that he is. So I think, but yeah, like you said, I think it's the females that really drive the story forward. And I think also I forgot to say, like, my favourite characters are actually Pretty and Pinky. Like, I love them, the twin cousins, right? And I loved writing them.
That's so fun.
Yeah, they're really fun and they're a bit crazy, and it's just like a proper like a cousin dynamic that I have with my own cousins, and I wanted it to be something that, you know, everyone can relate to. Everyone's got, you know, cousins like that somewhere in the family. So I think it's the female characters, I would say, that really drive the story forward, and the men are just like little side pieces almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because I mean, even with Zachariah, like he is not center stage at all, or Noah. Like Noah, we only meet him like maybe 3 times in the book actually, and you know you don't give like we don't have like a Noah backstory. You know how sometimes in the book separately there's like a backstory of this other character that we haven't even met yet, but we don't have that because it's not his story. The story is Maya's story, and I feel like we get enough about Noah just from the few interactions that we do have with him as readers to at least know whether or not we think he's right for Maya, which, you know, is kind of evident. I think beautifully executed in your book. You didn't even feel like a decision because Maya had changed so much throughout the book as well. I think, you know, had as he was getting off the train, had he managed to give her phone number, and even then if he had dropped the list, I think it would have been a completely different story. But because she had that few weeks or few months where she was essentially living her best life and doing all this great new stuff, and I think had completely changed her view of things, which was just so like refreshing to see.
Yeah, I was going to say it's ironic because he actually helped her do that. But that's what took her away from him as well, ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. And I really enjoyed reading the relationship between Maya and her mum, because they have such a, like, sometimes in fiction when it comes to South Asian families, we have like a very villainous mother figure who doesn't really understand her children, especially her daughters, put so much pressure on them. Is really, really judgmental. And obviously, like, her mum wants her to get married and still has some ideas that are not particularly helpful. But overall, like, they have a very respectful relationship, like a really nice relationship. What was it like for you writing that mother-daughter relationship, and what were you consciously trying to show us?
So I modelled the mum on my aunt, on my mum's sister, actually. So she's very similar to my aunt and how my aunt is with her daughters. Because in the previous book with Zara's mum was a lot bigger, right? Her character was a little bit villainous, and she liked saying hard truths, and she didn't care what people thought. She just did whatever she wanted to do. So this time I wanted to show someone a bit different, who, like you said, also has the same dreams and aspirations for her daughter of getting married and so on, but at the same time wants to be supportive and wants her to find her own feet, and, you know, is happy for her to explore who she is and what she wants to do, so long as she sticks to these parameters. And I think that is quite realistic. I think that is what a lot of mums of that generation are like now. I think Zara's mum was a lot older than Maya's mum. Maya's mum is a lot younger. And so she has, you know, and she works. Zara's mum didn't work. Maya's mum goes to work and she's busy. She's got her own things going on. She has a good relationship with her husband. So she's not as involved in Maya's life as, say, Zara's mum was in her daughter's life. I just wanted the mum this time to be different. And I wanted her to be complicated. I didn't want her to be black and white. She's got qualities and she's got flaws, and there's things that she's good at and there's things that she's not, like obviously the inequality between Maya and Malik, and she kind of totally feeds into all of that. But you know, she realizes at the end and she tries to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking about Zara does make a cameo, a slight feature in the 34th Edgelist. And I have to tell you, oh my gosh, when I realised it was her, I was like screaming, and I was texting my friend Hasina, and I was like, oh my God, it's Zara from Fadi Muslim 75, because it was just so lovely, like so lovely to see that, and so nice, I guess, to get an ending from that book, because that kind of ended like a little bit uncertain.
And everyone hated me for that. I was like, I had to redeem myself. I thought everyone was so pissed off with that ending. I was like, you know what? So my editor did say, like, you can do it, but that means that you can't really write another book 2 now, if you ever wanted to write a book 2, because you've spoiled it. But I can't see myself writing that story anymore anyway. So I thought, you know what? I'd rather just have her give a little cameo, and then everyone can feel satisfied that, you know, that her story has properly concluded.
No, it was yeah, it
That
was
was fun. That
so
was really fun
lovely. It just
writing
felt
that.
like
I thought it was pretty genius. I thought when I came up with the idea, I was like, wow, how did I come up with that? You know?
it was so nice, and I think that like all of your readers that have read Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine will greatly appreciate it, because it's so lovely the way that it happens in the book as well. Um, what do you really hope for people that pick up the 30 before 30 list?
So I don't know about hope. Obviously, you just want people to enjoy it. I want people to enjoy it, and I want people to find little bits of themselves in it, hopefully. And it'll be really nice if people are inspired to kind of like go out there and do different things as well. Like I've already had quite a few people message me saying, you know what, I'm going to write a list. I'm going to do a 40 before 40. And I've even had people saying, you know what, I need to do a 50 before 50. So it's kind of getting people, like even me as I was doing it, I was like, why didn't I actually I did try and do a 30 before 30 list. And I flopped at it. Like I had I probably did about 10 things on the list, and then I couldn't be bothered, and then I gave up. And then I didn't even try and do a 40 before 40. But after writing this, my best friend and I were like, we're going to do a 50 before 50. We're just going to do it.
But you're kind of crazy. You would have put some crazy things on your list anyway.
Yeah, I did. Did have crazy, and I had some really unachievable things as well on the list.
Exactly.
So I think I'm going to do. Yeah, I need to do something that's achievable. 50 little things. How am I going to do 50 things, man? I'm already tired thinking about it. But it would be nice if people just feel a bit inspired to get out of their comfort zone and try something a little bit different as well. That would be great.
And what do you? Yeah, I guess if your characters were real people, what would you hope? What would you hope for them in the world?
In the world. So with Maya, I really hope that Maya does go and does become like a qualified solicitor like she wanted. I hope she goes and moves to, another country and, is with the person that she wanted to be with, and they're happy and they just have all these great adventures together. Obviously, I want her to have a really happy life, and I want her brother to sort himself out, become a decent person and find happiness as well. All of them, I really love them. Like they become a part of you. And I want the best for them. And I think with Maya, what I love about her is her growth. And, she starts the book off like one way, and by the end of it, she's just grown so much. And I'd love her to carry on growing. I hope nothing horrible happens to her to make her regress and like lose everything that she's found. And I think, she's worked on herself a lot, and she still needs to work on herself, obviously. She's not there yet. Nobody's there yet. And I think what I'm seeing more and more, and even in the people around me, like, my friends, who they were when they were 30 is so different from who they are now as 40. Like we've all really worked on ourselves to figure out who we are and where we fit in this world. And I think it's so powerful when you kind of figure that out and you have that kind of peace, and you're just comfortable in your own skin. I think some of us, especially us women of colour, growing up, I feel as if a lot of us just were so uncomfortable in our own skins and our own bodies. We didn't know who we were. We didn't know who we wanted to be. We didn't know where we fit in. We didn't know if we were accepted. We didn't know how to speak because, we felt people were judging us even if they're not. We were just walking around in this like perpetual like state of confusion and sometimes resentment as well. And I just really want, like Maya, obviously not to go back to that. She's just done so much, and she's finally figured out who she is. And I just hope she carries on in that vein, inshallah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And actually, something I've been thinking a lot about when it comes to your work. Like, I think the reason why I find your representation so real and wholesome is because you give us characters that like who they are. And I don't mean obviously like we're all on journeys to find ourselves, and we can be in a rut and we can but they don't hate the fact that they're Bengali, or they don't hate the fact that they're Muslim and that their parents are Muslim and they're eating halal food or whatever. Like they're people that actually love those parts of themselves. And there are problematic issues like the colorism that you mentioned, like the pressure on women to get married, etc. But it's really, there's an element of loving yourself and loving not just yourself, but like your culture and your religion that we don't see enough in mainstream rom-coms. A lot of literature, even, there's some really great books out now, but still a lot of the focus tends to be on people that don't really like their traditional Asian parents, or their typical, or their like conservative, very strict Muslim families. Especially like rom-com will be a lot of like very wild experiences and people like turning away from their families. Do you feel like professionally, do you feel any kind of, I don't know, like challenges or any kind of limitation because you are telling a story that is not feeding into existing stereotypes and harmful tropes?
If I'm being honest with myself, probably. I think because they're not like scandalous and they're not exotic and they're not like all of that. Yeah, probably. Like no one really wants to read about really wholesome Muslim romances, do they? Well, except other Muslims, but other people, you know, the wider, which is, you know, community of readers, they probably, you know, don't want to read that, but I don't really care. Like that's not why I'm doing it. Like I don't write because I'm trying to be, you know, famous and I'm trying to be the next whatever, you know, and I'm trying to like, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to tell authentic stories about us, you know, because that's what I feel has been lacking my entire life, and that's all I want to do. And whatever story comes to my mind, I'll just write that story basically, and I'm hoping somewhere along the line someone will pick it up and someone will publish it. And if that happens, that's amazing. And even before anyone like say with Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine, before I got a publisher and an agent, I was putting chapters up on a blog for fun, because I was writing for, you know, I was actually writing because I wanted to tell a story, and I didn't care how people read it. I didn't have to be paid for that. I just wanted the story to get out there, and that's all I cared about. And obviously once I got an agent, she was like, you need to take this down. Like you can't put all your chapters up for free. No one's going to buy this book if you do that. So then I had to stop. But you know, so the aim isn't to like, you know, world domination is not the aim. The aim is just to like write stories that I feel happy writing and I wish that I could read more of, and hopefully our people can feel connected to that, and that's it. And so long as I can do that, I'm happy.
Yeah, you know, I think that's so beautiful. Obviously, like I hope that lots of people read your books, but it just reminded me of something that, you know, Suhaima Manzoor Khan was on the podcast a few months ago, and we were talking about how sometimes like in the activist field it can feel so difficult when you're speaking to people of a different view. Like when you're like, you know, you're posting about Gaza and you get some like pro-Zionist people comment on your page and like how frustrating that is. And she said, like, you know, sometimes you feel like you just need to comment back, even though you know you're not going to change their mind, even though you know this is not going to make a difference to the movement, but you just do it because you want to know that at least it was said, that at least that somebody said the thing that needed to be said. And I feel like that's very similar to what you're doing, that you're saying, at least I'm putting these stories out. So in 10-15 years when kids are growing up, at least they will have an option. At least the world will know that these stories exist. And I just think that there's something so beautiful and so powerful within that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, it's like the way you talk about me and my work, honestly, I just find it really humbling. Like, I can't believe somebody like you is saying these amazing things, you know, about my little stories. Honestly, I do feel like that. So thank you. And thank you for giving us this platform, because without platforms like yours, no one will even know about our books. They'll just disappear. Into nothing.
Well, I really hope that your book don't disappear into nothing. But no, honestly, like I have meant every word, and I can't wait for more people to read it. It's just been out for a few weeks at the moment, and you know what? And it's hilarious as well, especially when they go on holiday. And the bits with the Snapchat, oh my gosh, I was in stitches, like just so funny. And you are very funny in general as well, like you're so funny.
No, but I don't find myself funny. You know, like I don't find myself funny, obviously, right? But so then when I was writing this, like everyone thought that Finding Mr. Perfectly Fine was funny. So then I felt this pressure. I was like, oh my God, like I now have to write something funny, and I don't know if I can write something funny. Like, what if nothing funny comes to you? Then what do you do then? So but yeah, that funny thing came to me, and I'm so glad it did. Because it still makes me laugh, to be honest. Even when I read it now, I'm like killing myself laughing.
So funny. Well, you know what, Tasneem, it has been so lovely speaking to you, and I really hope that people pick up your book. I will put a link in the show notes of the episode. But thank you so much. It was so wonderful speaking to you.
Well, thank you for having me, and you're going to have me back next year, I'm sure, when the next one comes out.
Yes.
So yeah,
Inshallah,
I'll be here forever. As long as you're here, I'm here too, inshallah. Thank you.
I loved every second of speaking to Tasneem today, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please follow the Diverse Bookshelf on your podcast platform of choice and connect with me on social media. I'd love to hear from you, and I would really appreciate it if you could rate and leave a review, as it helps more people find the show.